This is still starting. Okay.
Nice.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Catherine. I'm from the Natural Mom Hub, and I'm here with
Andra Brill, and I'm with Happy Mindful Families.
And we're really excited to have Dr. Brill with us this evening, and we're going to be talking about temper tantrums. And as the mother of a 2-year-old, this is something that I do encounter more often than not. And so some of the, tonight our goal is just to go over some understanding of why this is happening, what our kids are really experiencing, and then how we can kind of cope and support them.
Yep.
And so we have some great questions from parents who've written in. But first, to get started, Andra, can you just tell us about you and your background and how you got into all of this?
Yeah, sure. So my background is in education. I've been an educator for over 20 years and have worked with first as a classroom teacher and then coaching teachers and training teachers for the classroom. And so in terms of classroom management, I've done lots and lots of work and lots of research around what's developmentally appropriate. And I'm kind of a science geek, so I love the neuroscience behind this. And then I have a daughter who's about to turn 7. And when she was little, I decided I wanted to do something that was a little bit more flexible. And I've just gone back to work for the public schools, which is really exciting. But this work really came out of the research that I've done and my own practice around being a gentle parent and trying to be more gentle in my parenting, and my own mindfulness practice. So how do I sort of stay in control of my own emotions? And a lot of it is about just being able to manage my own emotions and help my daughter manage her emotions. So tantrums are actually my favorite thing to talk about.
This is so funny because we actually held a poll and we voted on what topic we should tap your expertise for. And when I told Andra that it was temper tantrums, you were like, "Oh, goody!"
I love tantrums.
And it's just the funniest response to any mom to be like, "Oh wow, she's really excited to talk about this." So. I think we're in store for some great info.
Great.
So what is the kind of the background information that we need to know about?
So a lot of what I talk about, I call it unconventional wisdom around parenting, unconventional parenting wisdom. And there's some basic things that are really good to know. So the first thing is that sometimes I think the very first thing is that for most of us who have been successful in the world and have, we've had jobs or we know how to do what we do well, that we have a kid and then suddenly we're using the same strategies and they're not working the same way. And so there's this sense of frustration, like, wait a minute, before I had kids, I felt totally together. And now I've got this kid and I'm like a hot mess.
Right.
So, and I say that because I've been like, I totally get it, right? I had this huge job and I managed lots of people and I just had this big thing going on. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to stay home and work part-time and hang out with my kid. And it was like, holy cow, this is all the things that I think I know about how to manage is not working with my kid. So that's the first thing to know, is that if you have noticed that you're not alone. That's a really, I think for really smart, capable women, it's a really common phenomena and we don't talk about it enough. So that's the first thing. The second thing to know is this idea that kids are not actually little adults. And that's part of the reason that sort of, if you have a big job and you're like, here's what needs to happen, here are the steps to make it happen, let's just do it. And kids are just like, yeah, whatever, mom, right? They're like, they have their own agenda, they're doing their own thing, and they're not. So just to remember that, even things that work with your partner, we all have these little things we do with our partners about like getting the dishes done or being home on time, whatever it is that we do, like that's not going to work with your kids in the same way. And just to give yourself permission and know that it's okay.
So my ability to influence my peers, my partner, really has no bearing on my ability to persuade
a 2-year-old
or solicit cooperation from my 2-year-old.
No. And hopefully by the end of our conversation, you'll have some strategies.
Okay. So
the things that I like to talk about is I'm really passionate about the science. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the science. That's what the chart behind us is. And then really give you strategies that are practical hands-on strategies. And then the third piece of sort of like the secret toolkit in terms of science and strategies, the third part of it is really magic. And the magic is love, right? Like it doesn't have to be hard. And sometimes the magic is just shutting up. But we'll talk about how to pause and how to sort of pause yourself as the grown-up in the situation so that you can hold some space for your kid to do what they need to do.
Okay, sounds great.
Yep. So some other things that are good to know beforehand. Central to the way that I understand tantrums is that children's nervous systems are not fully developed until they're probably about 5 or 6.
Okay.
And so I think what happens is that we have this undeveloped nervous system that gets overactivated and overstimulated. And then it sort of gets to the point where you get a tantrum and then you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? But just to know that the fact that your kid is tantruming in this moment does not mean that like when they're 7 and 8 and 9 and 17, that they're going to continue to tantrum. Because I think the other thing we tend to do, I don't know about you,
they're going to go to college like this or.
Yeah, well, so I used to have these moments where my kid was like completely out of control. And I was like, I would take this moment of being out of control and be like, holy crap, the rest of my life is going to be trying to manage this monster.
We extrapolate.
Yeah. We take this moment and we like project it into the future. And now suddenly this. And I was like, I would take this moment. we're living the nightmare.
Sorry, we're just making sure everything's working.
Yeah. And so our job as parents is really to support the emotional development.
And have some perspective that this is our now, it's not our forever.
It's our now, it's developmentally appropriate. I for a while I was like, my kid doesn't tantrum, and I would come over. Like I didn't say it out loud because you don't want to say that. And then of course she tantrum like everybody else. So it's just part of what kids do. And it's actually part of them sort of figuring out their self boundary with the boundary of the world. So, so that's part of what's going on. So this idea that the nervous system is underdeveloped, our job is really to sort of to support them as much as possible. And then we'll talk a little bit about the science really.
Okay.
So let's see. It probably makes sense to talk about the science because I'm kind of halfway there already. So let me go ahead and do that. All right. So you can see me. Right? So this has to do with the neuroscience, and we could talk about the brain and the parts in the brain. We have the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that just the only job the amygdala has is, am I safe? And so it's the fight or flight part of the brain. So we've all heard about that. And then there's the prefrontal cortex, which is where we do all of our rational thinking and problem solving and interpersonal. Are you okay? Am I okay? So that's the executive functioning part. So this is a chart of intensity. So this is how intense the emotions are over time. Okay. And usually what happens is we start, we get up in the morning, we start over here and like, we're okay, everything's cool. And then something happens and we like get a little escalated here, a little something else. And like, before you know it, you're just like, I don't know about you, but like before I know it, I'm standing at the door trying to get my kid out the door and like, put your shoes on, put your shoes on, put your shoes on, get your lunch, put your shoes on. Ah! So, again, this is probably just me. I'm sure. Has this experience. This is the part that's where the emotions are really elevated. And so that's the most intense part. And what I understand is that when we're at this part, it's actually called the amygdala hijack, and the amygdala sort of gets to the point where the prefrontal cortex just
there's no more rational thought.
There's no more rational thought. It just goes offline. And if you think about how hard it is for us as adults to get to that point and then be like, oh, right, how do I bring myself back down? So now think about your 2-year-old, your 3-year-old, who doesn't have any experience with what it means to have that kind of strong emotion. And they don't know they don't know where to go or what to do with it. So a couple of things going on. This, this can be really steep. This can go, it doesn't have to go as high. It doesn't have to last as long. But just for the sake of our conversation, let's say this is actually not me anymore, but this is my daughter. So my daughter Emily gets up. She used to do this thing when she was little. So she would wake up, we'd get ready, and we would go downstairs to have breakfast. And if I went downstairs and I didn't hold her hand, like if I walked 2 stairs in front of her, she would, like, that was the tantrum for the morning. But you need to come back and you need to walk back up the stairs and we need to do it all. I'd be like, whoa. And she would be up here, like, from 0 to crazy in a breath. And then she would be up here. And so what I'm going to talk about is sort of the before, the during, and the after part of the tantrum. So this is the during part of the tantrum. And at some point I heard this research that talked about when kids are tantruming, they're mad. They start off being mad and angry, and we all think it's about control and manipulation, but whatever it is, I'm not sure it is, but whatever it is, they're up here. And then there's this little place right here where something switches and they go from being really mad and they start to be sad. And so if you just watch your kid, you can, and look for it, you can notice when they start to be sad. And then when they start to be sad, this is the beginning of the after tantrum. And this to me is the most important part. I think there are things for parents to be involved in kind of managing. This is where you can actually do your parenting. So part of my unconventional wisdom is we always want to figure out how to parent in the tantrum. There's not actually a lot of parenting that needs to happen in the tantrum. In the tantrum, it's about, wow, I see you're really upset. You just sort of name it. Yeah, I wish I could give you all the toys that you want right now. I wish I could give you, but like, you just sort of give it back to them. Yeah, I get it. You are so disappointed and you are really mad. And I'm gonna actually move myself. I'm gonna make sure you're safe, and I'm just gonna move away a little bit. And when you're ready to connect with me, please come and let me know, because I want to connect with you. Which is a really different way than you're okay, it's fine, right?
Like in their face, like
it's okay. It's okay. What do you want? How are we going to fix it? Like the fix it thing. Right. When you let go of trying to fix it, then it transforms. And then kids, they're just going to do this anyway. And my theory is that when kids start to get sad and when they start to come out of the tantrum, there's also all this fear. So they have just experienced being completely out of control. So think about how like you feel when you've been completely out of control. Right. When you've like raged the person who you love the most.
And you're like, oh no, what have I done?
Right? Like you're like there's all this stuff that's caught up in it. And so I think kids don't know how to deal with that. And so again, part of it is when it's time to, what I say, like at the end of it, at the after part, so there are things you can do afterwards is you wanna connect and you wanna repair and you wanna make a plan for the next time. So those are the after pieces. So really.
So when they start to get sad and you see kind of the shift, is that a good time to like reach out to them?
Yeah. And you can see, like they might say, no, I'm not ready. And again, the message is, I am here. I'm always here. When you're ready, I want to connect and I want to repair. And so in our house, we actually have conversations about, are you ready to repair yet? No. Okay, great. I'll wait for you to repair. Like,
that's what happens when your mom is teaching parents.
Exactly. When your mom is me. So let's go back to the beginning part. Okay. And then we'll talk a little bit about like what I actually do in the middle part. So I wrote down this, it's backwards for you guys, but anyway, it's easy. And when I asked my 6-year-old this evening, when I said I was coming to do this, I said, what should I let parents know? She's about how to help their kids with their tantrum. She said, well, tell them to make sure their kid has eaten and has slept and has gotten enough attention. So easy really is eating, activity, or attention when they get a little older, sleep, and then the why part is, are you taking care of yourself? And so sometimes this is the other thing that goes on, particularly with primary caregivers and mothers in particular. But kids their undeveloped nervous system is actually mirroring and developing. I can't believe I said that word because my husband teases me. It's my New York accent.
Mirroring?
Kids they are mirroring our nervous system and our nervous responses. So those moments when you're trying to put your kid to bed, but really you're trying to make it happen as quickly as possible because you want to like go back downstairs and watch something or get some work done, or those,
you're somewhere else.
You're somewhere else, and those are the times where they're like, don't go, no, like
just read one more book.
Right. Which is really different from the nights where you're just like, oh, I'm just totally here for you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's we're connected in that way, in this, and really around emotional responses. So a lot of what I talk about is how do we manage our own emotional responses, and we can, if we have time, we'll talk about that too.
Okay.
And that was part of the offer.
Yeah.
Was a little something to help us all with our emotional responses. But the really short, simple way to think about the emotional response is just a pause. And by pause, I mean you can just feel your feet on the ground and take 3 slow, deep breaths. And that actually changes your physiology. It helps, like, even me, when I'm like, just to slow down and like be a little more present in the moment. So before the tantrum, when you sort of notice things kind of going in that direction, it's basically, make sure your kids' basic needs are being met. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. So I do this, I do this a lot, and somehow I'm like, oh, right, after the tantrum, I think I forgot to feed her any protein today. So it's a problem. So that's kind of the big thing, is just to sort of check in and kind of see what you can control in the moment. And just, this idea that kids are manipulating us, I think is, I think it's convenient, and I think it's, it's nice to believe like, oh, my kid is so manipulative and is like throwing this fit to get what they want. More often though, I feel like kids are really using their emotions to tell us that something's not working for them. And it's really a way to communicate. And so again, it's kind of a way to twist the conventional way of thinking about it. So kids are communicating, and then they sort of go off the rails. And now we have this full-blown tantrum. Often at this point, I hold up a picture of a brown couch. Because in our house, what happens is when my kid loses it, and I remember when she was younger, and we would have, like, I would start yelling at her, and she would start yelling at me, and she was sort of losing it, and I would just like, oh, I'm the grown-up. I'm just gonna sit down on the couch. And when she's ready, like, and then she would sort of like do her thing, and she would see me sitting on the couch calmly, and she'd be like, oh, right, we're gonna switch. What's happening here? So the other thing to think about here for the beforehand is what I call your superpowers. And this is all backwards for you, but
it says superpowers, people.
It says superpowers. So you have 3 superpowers. And I call them superpowers because it has to do with time, space, and your own secret power. Secret power, which is my favorite. So when we start yelling at our kids, and this is a little less about tantrums, but it's also about, again, how do we manage ourselves? Mm-hmm. The time part is this is when kids get a little bit older, and we're like, put your shoes on. Nothing happens. And we're like, put your shoes on. Nothing happens. Put your shoes, and now we're screaming at them to get their shoes on and get out the door. Mm-hmm. And part of it is that, again, so our strategies with other adults is, I'm going to ask you to get me a glass of water, and then you get me a glass of water, and like my husband forgets, and then I get right. So we have expectations. But what if I told you that the normal expectation for kids is that you need to say it 3 times? So I just say to my kid, and there's I'm not going to write it up there, but the words you want to use is you need to, or I need you to, which is really different than, can you put your shoes on? When do you put your shoes on?
Okay.
Right?
I see that.
It's really different to say, you need to get your shoes on once. And then the second time I might say it again. Hey, honey, I need you to get your shoes on. And then the third time, magic words, I'm going to count to 5. You need to get your shoes on by the time I count to 5, or I'm going to help you do it. And again, this works when kids are probably under the age of 4. And then they start to get older, and it becomes less respectful. Mm-hmm. But I think for younger kids, what's helpful about it is I'm gonna help you. Like, you're not bad, you're not doing anything wrong. You're being 2. Mm-hmm. And you want to play, and actually again, the brain science between kids are totally focused on what they're doing, and all of a sudden there's this blah, blah, blah that says, like, do something else. And they're like, no, I'm so into this, mama.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I need you to pay attention to my words. You need to get this done. We need to get out the door. And it's really, and I understand that it's hard. And if you can't do it on your own, no problem. I'm going to help you do it. And usually that works. Not all the time, but most of the time that works. The other thing is space. So the other thing that we do is kids playing in one room, we're finishing up the dishes in the other room. Get your shoes on. Okay, so now I'm yelling. Only because I'm going like other places, right? Which is really different than if I like walk up to you and I'm like, hey,
you need to put your shoes on.
You need to get your shoes on. Or we gotta get out of here. So it's just, it feels different. So if I'm yelling from one room and my kid is yelling back at me and I'm yelling at her, then chances are, even though there's no real threat, our nervous system gets confused and suddenly we're screaming at each other. Mm-hmm. So time, space.
Give them time. Go into their space.
Close up the space. Mm-hmm. Get close. And the secret power is just do one thing at a time, which I know sounds crazy, but a few years ago I asked my daughter, just because this is what I do to her, I was like, so what's the most important thing to me? And she's like, one thing at a time. She's like, it's what you always say. Mm-hmm. But what it does is it sets a norm in our house that I want to, whatever it is I'm doing, I really want to focus on it. And so if I'm cooking and I'm like, I have a sharp knife in my hand and she's like, I need help finding whatever I need to find. I would just say, so what am I doing right now? You're chopping vegetables. Okay. And how many things can I do at once? One. Okay, so let me finish doing this and then I will help you do something else.
So you're just reinforcing that one thing at a time. You can only do one thing. They can only do one thing. That's all anybody can do, is just one thing at a time.
Right. And it's a practice. Like, do I always do one thing at a time?
Right.
Yeah, we all have
to do three things badly.
But again, this is about going back to like before kids. Before kids, I was a master multitasker. Right? I did a million things. I was like on the phone, writing papers, doing everything all at the same time.
Right. And
what I realized is that I really want to be present. I can tell you that, this idea that it all goes by really quickly. It all goes by really quickly. So I want to be as present as possible for as many of the moments.
Sure.
Because I feel like the years and the days actually go by fairly quickly. So one thing at a time
that's the secret.
Just try it.
Okay.
All right, that's the before piece. Do you have questions? Is there anything else I should?
No, that sounds great.
Okay.
Well, actually, can we do this question from one of our parents who wrote in?
Come sit down.
I just want to know what to do when a temper tantrum starts. Right now, I try to distract, but with this last one, there was no distracting him. He got so upset he was having trouble breathing. I tried to speak calmly and recognize why he was upset without giving in, but it felt like it didn't help.
Yeah.
So I can kind of imagine this place that this parent's in, and I'm just wondering if you have some suggestions, or we could reassure her that, so she probably said before, that's like up here, right?
Yeah. So he's getting up here, and here's my guess, and I say this because I think it's what we do as parents, is in those moments we start to feel like we're not doing, like there's something wrong with us as parents. If we were better parents, this wouldn't be happening. If I was smarter, I would know how to deal with this. There's got to be some sort of answer. And how do I control this? And again, it goes back to before kids, we had lots of strategies for controlling our world. And then you have this kid. And so it can activate our own sense of like not being good enough and panic and insecurity. Yep. And if we're having that experience, then our kid is gonna, wherever they are, they're gonna take it up a notch because they don't have something calm to come back to. Mm-hmm.
So it's important for the parents to either regain or maintain, kind of just control of,
just feel your feet on the ground. So the trick is feel your feet on the ground. Take 3 deep breaths. Take a moment to sort of what's really going on here, and then the really important things. I mean, there's a pattern to tantrums, and you can actually just watch it. So there's a trigger, something triggers it, right? So you didn't walk down the stairs with me. I don't want to get in the bathtub, whatever the case might be. There's a trigger. There's the escalation part of it. There's the anger part, and then there's the sadness part. And so part of what you can do is, instead of trying to fix it, which is that's what we want to fix it. We want to stop this, make it go away.
Right.
Instead, you just become a kind of a scientist, and you're like, oh, let me see, what's actually happening here? And your job is to actually just keep your kids safe, whatever that is. So you want to, if they want to be on the ground and
kick their feet
fine. If they're hitting their head against the wall, that's not safe. So the idea is to keep them safe. Mm-hmm. You don't need to be in their space with them while they're tantruming, because they're up there, and their their ability to think rationally is offline.
Hmm. So that's what you were saying. You go to the couch.
So I just sit down on the couch, and I'm there. I'm nearby. I'm waiting for the sadness, because it will come, and then she'll be like, "Oh, Mama," and I'll be like, "Yeah, honey, yeah. Like let's connect. How do we need to repair? Because whatever, you said things that hurt me, or you kicked me, or whatever it is. Like we need to repair." Mm-hmm. And then how are we going to make sure this doesn't happen like this again? It will happen again.
Right.
But you want to start to be proactive about it. And so if you use this end part to make a plan, then the next time you're going up here, you now actually have something you can go back to.
Can you say, hey, remember last night when we had to get out of the bathtub? Because for me, it's not getting in the tub. It's actually coming out of the tub.
Yeah. So I'm all about being as proactive as possible. Mm-hmm. So before you get in the tub, so last night getting out of the tub was kind of hard. It was kind of hard. Didn't go so well. So what are we going to do differently tonight? How can we do this? How can we make a plan together? Mm-hmm. What can we do differently? So maybe tonight I will tell you that you have 5 minutes left.
Okay.
And I'm a huge fan of telling kids warnings. And part of it again is because their nervous system, the way that they operate in time and space is, again, it's a mature cognitive ability to say, I'm writing, and now I'm talking to you, and I'm playing, and now I'm out of the bath. Like that ability to switch quickly is really a sign of maturity, and kids don't have that.
Okay.
So, and when they're teenagers, they don't have either.
Well, but when those transitions are challenging, okay, we're going to turn this off now because we have to go get ready to leave, or okay, one more book, all of those kind of switching gears.
Yes.
That's another thing that's age appropriate.
Absolutely. Some might say that my daughter is really good at sort of stretching that out, because we do have those conversations, but I believe it's really good for her to be able to negotiate that. So while it's annoying in a 7-year-old, I'm hoping that by the time she's 17 or 27, it'll actually be a life skill that will.
So you mean like prolonging the transitions? That's what she does, or describe?
She wants to negotiate.
Oh, I see.
So now that she's almost 7, she wants to negotiate. So we're at the park, but I always give her a heads up. 5-minute warning, 2-minute warning. Now I just do it with fingers. I just hey, 5 minutes. 2 minutes, we're out of here. And she's like, 5 minutes. And she would do, when she was little, she'd be like, no, 4 minutes. And I was like, yeah, okay, 5 minutes. Okay,
yeah. You win.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you want. But to really help them with the transitions. And so the getting out of the bathtub is a great one. So my daughter had a really hard time getting out of, she loves the water. She could be in the bathtub forever. She's got toys and why would anybody, and again, it's so visceral, and they're having such a good time, and they're getting all their needs met, right? It's warm, they're getting attention, they're playing, it's all about that. Why would you want to switch gears?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Bath time's great.
So it's about giving them little cues along the way. So 5 minutes, and then after 5 minutes, I'm going to need you to help me put all the toys away. And then what I would tell my kid is, you can take the plunger out and you can stay in the bath until all the water's out, and then I'm going to take you out of the bath. Mm-hmm. But to give her little steps that she was part of, so that she understood that we were transitioning.
We're winding down. We're getting ready for the next phase.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
The funny thing about this is a total personal aside, but the more that I am asking questions about being present in my parenting and supporting where she is, it's like, it's so much talking. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I know that I cannot be the only parent that is
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's a lot of explaining.
It is a lot of explaining, and it's about being really intentional about when you're explaining and what you're explaining,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're just going to shut up.
Okay, I need to learn that shut up part.
No, because I mean, so here's the thing, like, I have this little game I play with myself. So in the morning, sometimes I just wake her up, or like when she comes in the morning, and I don't say anything. It's like this, like, what are her first words to me going to be? Like, I don't need to fill the space. And it's like, you know, I think of her first words of the day as like the gift of the day. And sometimes she comes up with like these ridiculous things about like giraffes and aliens and, you know, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like she'll whatever she was dreaming or whatever it is. But I feel like I don't need to fill all the space. And so even now, like, I'll pick her up from school and she'll run up to me and I'll walk out the door, but I don't need to ask her how her day was, and that, like, it's this gift, right? So sometimes I talk a lot. I like to talk. I talk a lot. There's a lot of talking.
Yeah.
And I think thinking about how to raise a kid who's emotionally aware, which is really what this is about. There is some talking about, wow, I see you're really mad. And when you're really mad, I understand. And the other thing I say a lot is, I understand. I understand that you really want dessert right now before we have dinner. I understand. I do. I really do.
Dessert's delicious.
Right? Who doesn't?
Come on.
So sincerely, like, I understand. I understand that this is really hard. I understand that you're really mad. I understand that you want to hit your little brother when he takes your toys. And in our house, we don't do that. And so there's the language is we, because I fundamentally, my belief is that kids want to feel connected and they want to feel like they belong. And that is it's primal. It's what we really want. And so this idea that this is what we, in our house, this is what we do. We do this in our house. We're kind to each other. We do not hit in our house. We don't do that.
So, like, if there's hitting in a tantrum, would that be a conversation that we have after the fact, after we've connected?
So after you connect and repair, and you might have to talk about the plan, and you might just say, like, we don't hit. And I see how mad you are, and if you want to come over and hit a pillow because you're so mad, that is totally okay. And if here's a piece of paper, here, we'll keep some paper over here. And if you need to rip paper because you're so mad and you want to destroy something, this is the place for you. Like, let's contain it and figure out where the right place is. Because again, they're trying to figure out, like, what's appropriate and not appropriate.
And they're looking to us to set that.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, should we move on to take a question?
Sure.
Okay. How do I deal with the very first temper tantrums while my daughter is still a baby, and her baby is 9 months old?
Yeah.
When we take something from her or remove her from the bath, again, this bath thing, she screams, pounds her fist, arches her back, pinches, and hits us. This just started, and we are so unsure of how to handle it.
Yeah. So what strikes me the most is that feeling of being unsure, and that's our sense of panic as competent, capable adults. Like, well, what is this? What is this, and how do I respond? And so the first thing is just, that's totally normal, right? Like, up until now, no one's actually tantrumed in our lives all that much, hopefully.
Right.
And even when grown-ups tantrum, it tends to look really different. So the first thing is just to notice what's happening for you in your body. And again, the shortcut way is feel your feet on the ground and take 3 deep breaths and just be like, what's happening for me right now? Like this, I'm mad, I'm scared. I want it to stop. I don't like my kid right now. I mean, that's another thing, right? Like when your kid's tantruming, it's like, holy cow, how free kid.
Why did I think parenting was a good idea?
How did, I will pay you to take my kid. I will pay you just so I can walk away from this for a few minutes. But this idea of like babies who are 9 months old tantruming. I mean, part of it, I would first go back to the idea of like basic needs and sort of seeing like, how, you know, enough food, enough protein, enough sleep, enough attention, which bath is all about attention. So it's about the switch in attention. And where are you personally? So I would check in with those 4 things. And I would, even with a 9-month-old baby, I would say, okay, you have 5 minutes left in the bath. So we're going to be in the bath for a few more minutes, and then we're going to put the toys away, or then we're going to put the soap back, or we're going to let the water out. And we're going to have, there's going to be some transitional action so that the kids can start to regulate their own emotions, because that's really, I think, what's going on.
And 9 months is, they get it. I mean, they are understanding.
They get it.
So I know sometimes people feel silly talking to their babies, but they get it. We underestimate that.
We do.
Okay.
We do. Absolutely. So we come hardwired to communicate with our caregivers. And that means that, you know, babies communicate in the ways that they can, which is by tantruming, and, you know, they can smile and be cute when they want to be, and then they can raise all havoc when they don't. So and they really do start understanding. And here's the other thing, even if they don't understand all our words, they're really clear. Like, we are communicating so much through our body language, through our own emotional state, through
and I can't remember which one it is, but just our level of,
our nervous system.
Like, okay, it's time to hurry up and do this. Come on, baby. You know.
So our nervous system, there's energy in our nervous system, and babies in particular, that's what they connect to. Yeah.
I remember that, especially like nursing and stuff. Like, if I was rushing to get through a nursing session, like, don't even, just like turn away from the clock, you know, because it doesn't help anybody.
It doesn't.
Nobody's motivated to get through it when you're motivated.
Like, I want to get out of the house in 10 minutes. I've got a sitter. I'm just going to nurse you and like whatever. Like, it doesn't. Right. So I think those are.
Yeah. So they're totally tuned in. So 9 months. Let's talk about the transition out of the tub, or, you know, taking something away that she has. Oh, you know, that's mommy's, or something like that, or that's mine.
The other thing that I'm pretty militant about is sleep, and so. Knowing when my kid is getting tired, and again, I'm the grown-up, so I'm going to regulate what really needs to happen. So if she's too tired to get in the tub, then I'm going to make the executive choice that, like, I'm not putting you in the tub at the end of a really long day.
Well, when we first drew this, I was like, where's nap time? Because that was sort of what I was thinking. Like, at some point you kind of jump in and have to say, you know what, this is.
Yeah. Well, and for little kids in particular, like, when they're done here, when they get back down here, they're exhausted. They've used up all their, like, it takes all their energy to throw that tantrum. So,
and it's a full body experience.
It's a full body experience. It is totally.
It's a little workout.
Yeah.
They need to rest. Yeah.
Yeah. They're pretty exhausted, and they're exhausted and they're depleted. And I don't know if I've said this, but they're really scared. So kids after a tantrum, they know that they've done, like, so they've had all this emotion taking over their whole body, and they've been completely out of control. And not only that, it's usually with the people they love the most. So the other thing that I hear a lot of is, my kid was great all day long in daycare, and then I picked them up and they were a hot mess. Why?
Yeah.
And what I usually say is, that's a sign that you're doing your job right. Because what it means is that your kid is working so hard to hold it together all day long, and that when they're with you, they feel safe enough, and they just whoosh, let it go.
Lucky us.
Yes. Yeah. It's for those of us who work full time, it's really hard, because we're away from our kid all day, and we want to come back and connect with them. And we get there and connect with them, and then all they give us is grief. And we're like, what are we doing wrong? And so part of it is to again, flip your way of thinking. It's not what you're doing wrong. It's actually that you're doing everything right.
Yeah.
And that your kid really is trying to connect, but is so tired and so exhausted that they can't quite figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so you come up with a, you come up with a plan. Like, when I pick you up, here's how are we going to work this out? What needs to happen? Do you want me to pick you up and we'll just sit together for a minute before we go in the car? Do you need me to bring you a snack because you're tired and hungry at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm.
So thinking, again, trying to be proactive and thinking about what are the things that are in our control. Because once the tantrum is in full blown, it's just, yeah, I see, it's really hard. Let me know when you're ready to connect again.
Mm-hmm. So, well, and this is another personal story, but on Saturday we had a second birthday party, and I was up at 6 a.m. for a 2 p.m. party getting like all the last minute preparation. And I was so frustrated. I mean, and I realized I had not given my daughter very much attention that day because I was so busy getting ready for the party for her. And it really made me question, like, okay, first of all, why am I doing this? She's not having fun, but, it's important. I think, I'm glad you brought up like those kind of base needs. And then also our own like anxiety levels. I mean, I was looking at the clock. I'm like, okay, people are going to be here in 45 minutes. I'm still in my pajamas, put this in the oven. Okay, let's frost the cupcakes. And I'm sure that was just like the most chaotic energy for her to be like, what is going on? It's supposed to be my party day. We're going to wear party hats. Like, and that's how we had talked about it, and It was going to be fun and wear hats, and then mom's freaking out. So,
yeah. So it's about, for me, it's about actually just being aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when, at whatever point it is, so you might go 3 or 4 hours in the morning, try to get things done. And then at some point be like, oh, wait.
Yeah. I said to her, I'm really sorry that I haven't spent any time with you. I'm so excited for people to come to our house for our party. And, but by the time that conversation happened, I'd been like a flurry of, energy. And
again, it's because that's how we know how to be successful in the world. Right. Like that
throw a fun party, do some stuff off Pinterest.
It's completely, but it's habitual, right? Like, this is how we've gotten to where we are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You are who you are.
Right. The party was a deadline, and it was just like me managing every other deadline. Like, just get everything done.
Here's my list, and I'm going to go through my list, and I'm going to make sure.
So right, Andra. Yeah.
And it works. I mean, that's, to some extent, it really works. And then in the context of helping this small person figure out how to navigate this crazy world we live in, this busy, crazy world, it just doesn't, I don't know. I haven't seen anyone who really makes it work. So if you make it work, would you?
Yes, I will.
Get back to us and let us know so we know what your secrets are.
I will, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so just looking at the time, what else do we need to make sure we hit? Because we have one more question that I want to make sure we ask.
Let me see. Yeah. I mean, I know I talked about the after piece, and I just have some notes that I think are important. So I did talk about kids being a little bit freaked out as they come back down.
Right.
And they're worried about their connection with you because they know that they've just done something that sort of has broken that connection, right? And so they're like, ooh, how do we, so your job is to be like, oh, this is how we connect again. Like, yes, so we have this thing like, you had a tantrum, that's bad behavior, don't do that again, right? Or if you have a tantrum when we're in public, I am pulling you out of wherever we are, which I think is totally fine. I mean, just to say, like, my kid would throw a tantrum in the restaurant and be like, oh, so if you need to have a tantrum, that's cool. I'm going to pick you up and put you in the car, and I'll sit with you in the car, and you can tantrum. And when you're ready to,
join everybody else,
we'll go back in. Yeah. So, it's
so removing them is appropriate.
Yeah. It's removing them is appropriate. And, another night we can talk about timeout, because timeout is one of those things that we do because it seems to work, and everyone sort of, that's what we don't hit our kids anymore, which is all good, and so instead we put them in timeout. But at some point we can talk about like what the message of timeout is. So this connection thing is really important. And I think until kids are probably 5, you need to be in connection with them. You can remove them. So I've actually said to my kid when she had friends over and she wasn't sharing, I'm like, wow, honey, you're having a really hard time. You need to go and have a seat on the steps, and I'll be right there. And I'll just sit with her on the steps.
But you're not isolating them. You're going, you're present, you're with them.
It's still about connection. And it's about helping her, like, what just happened? What can you do differently? So the blah, 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 the talking part again, right? Like in that moment, how do we making sense of what a better choice might be.
Okay.
Yeah. And then figuring out what repair looks like for you. The other thing to say is that another phrase that I really like is, what do you need? So kids come down, and particularly as they get a little bit older, but just, do you need this? Do you need that? What do you do? Like, it's really much more honoring. Think about it. If instead of me telling you what you need, I just ask, so what do you need now? You can say, I need a hug. I need some space. I need to read a book. I need a snack. It really helps kids come back into their body and figure out what it is that they need, rather than being all about you solving their problems for them.
Or like, here, eat this. Putting things like,
Really? Did you grow up in my house? That's what I did in my house.
Yeah. It's something the food can't fix.
Yeah, I think so. Those are kind of the big things. Yeah.
Okay, so here's a good one we just got in 30 minutes ago. Let's see. A few weeks ago, I told my 3-year-old son that we needed to wash his hands after he went to the bathroom, and he threw a major tantrum, like on the floor of his bedroom, screaming, crying, kicking the door, almost hyperventilating kind of tantrum. We wash his hands all the time, but on that particular day, I guess he just wasn't into it. I mean, they change their minds, right? I mean, that a lot.
I think what happened, for me, when my daughter did the exact same thing, it's this weird thing of, wait a minute, I live in a rational world, and like, if you washed your hands yesterday and the day before, and we're going to do it today, like, what's
the big deal? Just wash them.
You're throwing a tantrum? Like, what's loose with you? Like, what's not working properly? And so part of it is to remember that there's nothing rational about a tantrum. And that you can do the exact same thing from day one, like yesterday, and do the exact same thing today. And today there's this huge tantrum, and tomorrow it'll be fine. And part of it is we tend to sort of get enmeshed with our kids. So our kid, like, we're doing our thing, the kid has a tantrum, clearly something's wrong. And somebody once told me, it's like when the check engine light goes on in your car, and you're like, ah, and you take it in, and they're like, yeah, there's nothing wrong. A light just went on.
We need to reset this.
Yeah, it's just the light.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's helpful to think like, oh, this is just a tantrum. Nothing's wrong. You don't have to fix it. Yes, it's annoying, and it's never fun. But
so, do you wash his hands after he's done? Say, okay, are you done now? Because we're gonna wash our hands. I mean, it's still important to be consistent. I know I always am afraid. I'm like, am I giving in? Like, because she'll be like, one more book, and I'm like, okay.
So I tend to I tend to err on the side of what makes sense in this moment. So it's not uncommon for me to say something like, we don't have any more time, like, you got to get to bed, there are no more books. And then my daughter's like, well, but what if we just read one more book? And then I look at the clock and I kind of think, okay, like, tonight it makes sense. There's no school tomorrow. I'm happy to read you a few more pages. Because I think that's a more realistic way to respond.
Okay.
And I think everyone has to figure this out for themselves. Like, I realize it. And I'm totally the pushover on that in that way. And my daughter knows it, and it's.
But if you say like, washing your hands seems to be upsetting you today, let's not do it. I mean, like,
no. So it's
so they'll be like, but that's what we do. We just went to the bathroom, and so now we're gonna wash our hands.
So what I said before in terms of this belonging piece,
in our house,
we wash. After we use the bathroom, we wash our hands, and I know that. This isn't, you don't want to do it today. And so maybe we're going to make a plan, and we'll go to Bed Bath & Beyond, and you can pick out something scented that you want to smell on your hands, and make
a soap that you want or something.
Whatever it is. Yeah. So the idea, like, the tantrum is the tantrum. And then when it's over, and here's the other thing, and it might not, so the over part, sometimes if my kid is tantruming because she's really tired, like, I'll just wait till the next day.
Yeah.
So the talking thing, like, sometimes it's okay
to use your judgment on that.
Right. Like I'm
Okay.
tired, you're tired.
Yeah.
Let me give you some space to really calm down and reset. So take a nap, go to bed, and in the morning, just fresh and without just sort of like, hey, so remember yesterday when it was time to go to bed and you didn't want to put your pajamas on and have this huge fit. That's not really that we don't do that in our house.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't really work. That, and my daughter now, again, so I'm like, so how did that work out for you? And she's like, not so good. I'm like, okay, so let's figure out how to make it work better. Mm-hmm. And so there's also this thing about like knowing when your kid has the attention to listen to you talk.
Mm-hmm. And when they're just like.
And when it's time to just shut up and put everybody to bed.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
That's important.
I'm glad to know that we still have permission to just play that card and everyone's going to bed. That's it. Including myself.
That's
probably.
A great card. I'm a huge fan of go to bed.
Okay.
Start fresh in the morning.
So, Andra, do you feel that food has an effect on temper tantrums? Not only what, but when those foods are given to a child?
Yeah. So I think, what do I think about this? Every kid is different. And I think different kids respond to food differently. Mm-hmm. And part of it is really, again, being sort of your own little scientist around who your kid is. And each one of your kids will be different. Mm-hmm. So this kid who's tantruming, kids tantruming, my daughter, if I don't get enough protein into her body, she kind of loses it way faster. Mm-hmm. And there's a correlation between how much protein I can get her to eat for breakfast and whether or not how she's functioning at the end of the day.
Interesting.
And I just know this. And some days we fight over whether or not she's going to eat an egg. And some days I'm just like, great, you eat what you want. And I just know that at the end of the day, I'm going to sort of create a softer space around you because you're going to have a harder time managing yourself.
Interesting. So when I first read this question, I thought that it had to do with sugar. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's just post-holidays. And like, obviously we had cupcakes at our second birthday party on Saturday. And like, she's asked for cupcakes like every night. Yeah. And, one night I was like, you want to split a cupcake with me? And then she's like, more. So maybe not my smartest move, but I mean, in your research, are there things that you've seen? And then, of course, I've also been really careful with like other things that it can be inflammatory or irritating. Yeah. Like, I mean, some foods, some kids react to strongly, right? I mean, I'm thinking like some kids, like they're more inflamed by
yes,
like
absolutely.
gluten or dairy or
absolutely
eggs, even since you mentioned eggs.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to elaborate on this topic? Or she asked about when, like timing, I guess, time of day.
Again, like I know that if I feed my kids sugar for dessert, chances are it's going to be she's going to have a harder time settling down at bedtime. And I'm actually looking for solutions around the whole sweet tooth sugar thing. So for a while I was like, well, you can pack one thing in your lunch you can have like one cookie or one little gummy thing or just a little bit, because I don't want her to not have it and make it be like this great big special thing. I mean, I've also heard that it's not a great idea to use dessert as a reward. Right. So I've tried different things. We've tried giving her like sugary desserts when she gets home. So like snacks.
So she has her dessert earlier.
So she has her dessert earlier, and then dinner and dessert are two separate things. Mm-hmm. And then you just eat your dinner, eat whatever you want. Or before, like we'll say before dinner starts, like there will be, tonight there is dessert, or tonight there's no dessert. And then
it's not attached to like eat
three more green beans, and then you can have dessert. Because I think that's how we were all raised. That's how I learned how to manage food or not manage food, right? Like if you eat this, then you can have the dessert. And so I think it makes sense to me that it would be helpful to separate those two things, so that eating well and knowing if you're full. So I would ask her, check in with your tummy and let me know if you need more food or not. She's like, no, I'm all good. I'm like, okay. So for dessert tonight, we're having XYZ. Or, or
it's totally distinct. It's not connected in this, like,
it's not a reward.
Yeah.
So and again, like, think about using sugary foods as a reward. Kind of sets them up as, if you're good, if you behave, if you, what do I want to say? Like, there's some, when you do X and Y, then we can do something else. But, eating all your food and then getting some sort of sugary reward is probably not the best thing.
Okay. All right, Amanda, I don't know if we answered that question, but basically try what works for your kid. They're all different.
Yeah. And there's lots of really good, there are a lot of great resources on different food allergies. And my sense is that for whatever reason, there are more and more food allergies that we're seeing in kids. And just notice, like, when my kid eats a lot of carbs, this happens. When my kid eats a lot of fruit, this happens. When my kid eats a lot of protein, this happens. When they're eating a lot of sugar, because I think there are combinations too that work for some kids better than for other kids.
Yeah. And I know my husband studied some of the more like neuroscience-based ADHD treatments, and those have a pretty rigorous diet protocol. So if that's something along the lines that you're interested in, let me know and we can try to get you more resources on that.
Yep.
But it is 3 minutes to our countdown. So we want to thank all of you for joining us on this discussion of temper tantrums. I think I've definitely learned a lot about why they happen and what's really happening, and kind of coming to terms with that they will happen.
They will happen.
And it's just sort of heading off the ones that you can, witnessing the ones that you can't, and then kind of recovering together from whatever goes down.
Yeah.
So I hope this has helped some of you with individual questions, and Andra's going to invite us to sign up for her newsletter.
Yes. So if you sign up for my newsletter, if you come and visit me over at happymindfulfamilies.com and just sign up for the newsletter, probably in the next few weeks or the next few months, we'll be putting together a Gentle Parenting Institute, and I would love to just invite you and let you know what's going on there. We're working on all kinds of really amazing workshops to offer and different things. So yeah, that would be great.
There's always new things to learn, and I figure the more information that we can put out there for our parents, the better equipped we'll feel. And even if it's a temper tantrum in public,
it happens.
You'll have the tools to be able to deal with it. So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much for having me.
Bye.